Well, we are doing a part 2 to the expose, I think we'll call it, on ultra fast and fast fashion and ethical fashion more broadly. As Aussies, we like buying clothes. It still blows my mind how much we spend or just buy. It becomes big from a numbers perspective. And we talked a lot about that in our first episode. So if you haven't gone and listened to that, I would strongly encourage you to do so. But we do have Kat Halliday back, who is the ethical fashion lead at Baptist World Aid. Welcome back.
Great to be here.
Today's episode, we're going to take a slightly different slant because I like the history books. It sounds like you do too. I want to have a good discussion around historically sort of where this has all come from, but I also want to talk about the environmental impact. We touched a little bit on that in the episode that we did before, but I'm keen to dive deeper into it. I think most of the people who listen to our podcasts are always wanting to learn and grow, and once you know, then you can do differently. And so today I'm really excited I'm going to try to talk less, which I do a shite job of at the best of times, to get as many questions out to you. And I don't know if it's going to center a whole heap around money, but I think as we are listening to Kat's answers, really considering what our purchasing power means, where we can deploy choice, where we may not have really given it a lot of thought, and how we can bring our values into conversations around purchasing power, how we can think about it as investors as well from the other lens in terms of who we actually decide to put our money with from an investment lens. But we're going to talk all things fashion. There is no one more qualified than me to be giving this podcast. Kat's giggling. How dare you, Kat? I'm only joking. But I do think that this is so important, despite not being considered a fashionista by any stretch of anyone's imagination. I'm delighted to have you. I'm really excited for today's conversation, so strap yourself in. We're going to get into fashion. This is a podcast for everyone that wants to learn how to make fierce and bold choices with their money. We'll talk about how to shape your money mindset, investing for your future, your spending habits, the good and the bad, plus how to achieve your financial goals, and most of all, how to be financially fierce. I'm a financial educator and I want to empower you to be more in control of your money and build the financial future that you want. I run the Greenhouse Money Growing Program, and you can find details of that in the podcast show notes. My name is Jess Brady. It's time to get financially fierce. For context, you've obviously done the podcast series. Is there 6 episodes as part of the Beyond the Barcode series?
6 episodes, and then a playlist of bonus eps. We interviewed some great experts across the industry for the series, and you can get their full convos as well. So 6 main eps, and if you want to dive deeper, all those chats are there for you as well.
I love a good neurodivergent hyperfocus. I'm definitely when I go in, I go like all in. So like I'm very, very excited for that. But one of the things that I thought was interesting to talk through is, you know, you drew into sort of the history, or you wanted to explore the history of ethical fashion. Through that process, like, what surprised you about doing that research?
It's something that I didn't know a lot about. I actually don't come with a fashion background either. I come with a geography background. So this was a lot of new content for me too.
Hang on, I must understand this. What do you mean? What's your geography background?
I studied business and geography at uni, and that's probably the intersection that I love. That how does the world work in terms of, you know, business and money making the world go round, but also how communities work, how their health and well-being interplays with sustainability. I wasn't doing the kind of geography that just looks at rocks and maps and stuff, rivers, but all the people, community things, which is really intersecting with the fashion industry, the food industry, like you were talking about, embracing all of the steps of the journey last step as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you did this research, what surprised you?
I learned so much. I learned about a few pieces of like fiscal or geopolitical sort of policy things that really changed the way that fashion operated around the world. So it was in place for a long time, but there was a treaty of sorts, an agreement called the Multi-Fiber Agreement, and that kind of set limits globally as to where you could source materials from, who was making it, what price it could be to protect local industry, particularly in the US. That went away in the early 2000s and made clothing a lot more affordable, and our consumption just kind of doubled to match that. And I thought that was really interesting to learn about. And interesting in this climate of, I don't know, Trump trying to bring back local industry potentially through reinstating tariffs. I'm curious if it can work the other way round, or if taking it away has offshored it. We're used to this price point and we won't really go back to local manufacturing.
Or as you said in the last episode, these big organisations just look for, well, who could we go to if that market is no longer viable or isn't as attractive? How do we just deploy resources, extra resources into other markets where we can do what we want?
There was also like interesting pieces around the progression of our consumerism. That was one of them as well, just spending more because clothes cost less. But this comes out of a book called Worn by Sophie Thanhauser. And she says that back in the day, people had just a hook on their wall and that was their whole wardrobe. They had a dress for work and a dress to go to church, and whichever dress you weren't wearing went on the hook. My wardrobe is bigger than a single towel hook. But even then, in the sort of 80s and 90s, I think the invention of the walk-in wardrobe gave people a lot more space to store clothes, and they just consumed more to fill it. And I think that's just really interesting, the progression from a hook to a wardrobe to a walk-in. And we'll just keep acquiring to fill that space we have.
It definitely was during COVID, because I remember there was sort of strict rules, but it must have been just as we were allowed to mingle. Again, I had one of my staff members when I had a financial advice business come to my house because we were doing a photo shoot. And I was like, can you just come and help me figure out what the hell I have to bring? And I remember she went into my wardrobe and was like, but where are all your clothes? And I was like, they're here. This is my wardrobe. And she's like, is that
where are the rest of them?
Is that it? And I was like, that's it. This is going to be a very fast option because these are the options. She's like, I cannot believe that this is all you have. I'm like, how much have you got? She's like, I have at least 4 times this. And I was like,
wow.
Where do you put all of them? But you're right, architecturally, we are now making these monstrosities of these giant walk-in Kardashian, and God forbid you don't have the middle bit where you can have all of your jewelry on display and all your shoes on display.
Man. Like the Princess Diaries wardrobe. What a dream. The drawers of sunglasses that slide out. Or the Clueless wardrobe. I think media has really piqued our appetite for,
It would give me stress because I would just be wanting it to look perfect. And I can just imagine, I know what it would be like. It would be doom piles of washing baskets just everywhere. It wouldn't look like any of those. But I think that that's an interesting one. Like, what do our wardrobes today say about our values? Is it that, or is it that thing, I can't remember, is it Parkinson's law? Oh, I should actually look this up, where basically we stretch something to the amount of time that we have. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
If you want to get something done, ask a busy person.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
Exactly. So basically there's this concept of work expands as to fill the time available. We're kind of talking about that, but in a wardrobe. If you've got this giant wardrobe, it's just this thing of, well, I just got to fill it.
Yeah, I think that's the case across the board. When I was sitting down with Hannah, my co-host on Behind the Barcode, she was saying, that sounds exactly like all that dieting advice, that if you get a bigger plate, you'll put more food on your plate. And if you get a smaller plate, you'll have better portion control. If you get a bigger shopping trolley at the supermarket, you chuck more in because you're not weighed down by your basket that's getting too heavy. And I think our wardrobes are the same.
I agree with that. I agree with that. So I'm trying to figure out which one this is. Is it Louis the Fourth?
I've 14th, I think.
14th.
Maybe. Let me check.
Yeah, I think it's 14th because there's an X in front.
It was one of the Louis.
Louis the 14th, I've got this note here that says changed dress patterns each year.
Yeah, this was so interesting.
Tell me more. So tell me what.
This was really in the world of ball gowns and haute couture, however you say that.
Yeah.
His finance minister, I think at the time, said, if we can get designers to change the style of dress they're making each year, suddenly when you get to the ball, you can say, that person's wearing last year's dress. Whereas before you wouldn't really have noticed. And they also set limits around use local silk, use local manufacturing, and change your style every year. And that was just a little seedling of consumerism and of that comparison between who has the money to splash around, who's keeping up with the latest trends. It's not one ball gown a year anymore that we're operating to, but it's interesting to see where it's grown from there.
And sorry, the idea is, I'm imagining the finance minister is not doing it because they care wildly about, what styles are in or out. There's an economic component to this.
And I think we can really track the history from fashion as a craft and as artisanal or as really basic necessity, the 2 dresses that you have, one on a hook, to fashion as industry over time. And that's certainly where we are now. It's mass produced, it's mass marketed. We use it for human expression and to cling to identify ourselves, but also they're pumping out millions of the same products that we're all buying.
We should all look individual together.
That's right.
I find that very funny. And just thinking about that, in the last episode we were talking about Temu and just how much they exploded on the scene. But if you consider that, and I could be completely wrong because I haven't really looked into this at all, but if you're buying something from Temu which is made from, other parts of the world, and I'm sure Temu have an Australian team of some variety and they're obviously spending shed loads of money marketing it, but I think through American-based tech companies would be my guess, social media platforms. You sort of are cutting, if you think about it, from an Australian economy perspective, we're kind of cut out, right?
Our local manufacturing industry is really small, but there are a few orgs and a few businesses that are trying to meaningfully bring it back or to redefine what that means.
Yeah.
But yeah, the clothes aren't made here. They're probably not marketed on Australian sites. And yet we're spending a lot of money with these brands.
Yeah, and when you buy clothes or you buy anything really, and I love to, it's kind of a conflict in my brain. I am quite proudly frugal. I like saving money, but I also really like supporting small businesses. We've got to remember when you do, that's helping someone who can then be part of our economy. I just think it's interesting. Right. Obviously, there's a lot of different brands and there's a lot of Australian-led brands who have Australian teams and they might have a much bigger team that does a lot more here. But for those Temu examples, you actually are completely, I'm guessing, and I could be completely wrong, but you're leapfrogging. I'm struggling to understand who in the Australian environment actually, from an economics, taking Louis XIV's example, we're actually completely stripped out of that from an economic lens, right?
I think you could speak to that better than me as
I'm just guessing.
Finance girly on the podcast.
Well, I'm just thinking if it's not made here, if it's marketed through social media platforms, if it's owned, and I don't know who the hell owns Temu, but I don't think it's, don't think they'd have a huge Australian team. We're spending a lot of our money, but actually that money is not going back into local people's pockets as far as I can see.
Yeah, of course.
Also, just let me know if I'm completely wrong. Jess Brady _ financial advice. When we talk about, something you just mentioned before around fashion going from sort of being artisanal to industrial, what do we lose from that and what do we gain? I'm struggling to see the gains apart from the $3 shop T-shirts.
I think style has become democratized and we do have more option as to what we can wear and how we can sort of define and represent ourselves. And that is empowering and that is fun to do.
That's fair.
So that is a gain. We just operate across many industries in a completely globalized supply chain now, and this is part of that as well. Something that, so in this is episode 2 in our series that we're kind of covering the history of fashion. We sat down with Alice Payne, who's the Dean of the RMIT Fashion and Textile School. And everything that she said was a beautifully formed, perfectly expressed thought. It was amazing to chat with her.
Oh, like me, every time.
I wish that was me.
Same.
She said, what we've done is taken this innate and harmless and kind of beautiful human desire for self-expression and weaponized it for the profit of a few. And that wording, I think, was really powerful and clear. And that choice of weaponization to say, it's not really working for me. I don't really need this over-consuming mindset. Our planet doesn't need more clothes to be made. Those workers don't need an even lower piece rate like we were chatting about last episode. Who is it really working for except the very top?
Who is it working for except the very top?
But we're in the system and can change it. So let's ask that question and do something about it.
So what are your tips then for doing something about it? What would you say to someone who's okay, but what do I do?
This is maybe a little too big picture and we can get into the practical advice as well. But throughout the series, something that was really clear to me is that we could start asking a question of what story do I want my clothes to tell? I certainly find in my work in ethical fashion and throughout our conversation, we've seen the default story for modern fashion is not great. It's one of extraction and pollution. It's one of a price tag that doesn't meet the workers' needs. It's one of overconsumption and addiction. So if that's not the story that I want to participate in, what story could I tell with my clothes? And I think you might have a similar experience, but if I compliment a friend on their clothing, their face lights up if they get to say, this used to be my grandma's, or, I made this with the sewing machine on my dining room floor, or...
I look forward to being able to say that when I have made something with my sewing machine that's on the dining room floor.
That's right. I got it secondhand, or I was researching this brand and I love what they do and thank you for asking me about it because I want you to support them as well. That story is so exciting to share and so natural to share. I don't see the same face lighting up experience if we've gotten our clothes from some of these big brands. And so I wonder, what would it look like not to throw out our whole wardrobe and start from scratch with these story-worthy pieces, but when I am looking to acquire something new, what story is it telling and is it what I want it to tell?
I love that. And I think the word that you used before is a really important one, which is addiction. And I think it has, for a lot of people, become an addiction. And again, if that is not the story that you want for yourself, that I am spending my money in a way to try to self-soothe or to fill a void or what have you, then I think it's also about not only the story that I want to be told of my clothes, but what is the story that I want to tell for myself in terms of how I'm directing my money in a way that feels right for me. And addiction is complicated, and I certainly don't profess to be an expert at all. But I think when we think of addiction, we think of it when it comes to drug and alcohol use, and we think of it as people who have ended up in really awful, terrible situations where they find themselves homeless or they have significant mental health issues or what have you. But we are seeing huge levels of addiction with spending and with shopping, and not just with clothing, but with online shopping more broadly. And often people need a circuit breaker. And so I would say to you, absolutely, and I'm gonna borrow that. I was going to say steal, but I'm just going to borrow it if you don't mind, and consider that when I'm doing my annual haul of secondhand clothes, in terms of what is the story that I want to tell. But I also think, there are some practical things that I would say to someone, which is, let's just get really simple. Implement a 24-hour rule. Implement a 24-hour rule where if you find something that you absolutely love, just sit on it for 24 hours. My friends, I don't care what all of the things say and the spinning wheels and the hurry now, one left only. Just wait 24 hours. It gives you that clarity to really step back and go, what am I trading off? Do I really want that extra thing, or do I want to be able to buy a house sooner or pay off my debt sooner or send my kids to this school or have a holiday or whatever? What's the bigger thing, the invisible transfer or trade-off that I'm making by buying the thing in the heat of the moment? I would also say make a list. Like I was talking to someone yesterday and Black Friday is coming up, which you guys must just be like, strap yourselves in. And I said, if you know you're going to spend money, I was talking to my greenhouse members about it, for Christmas, etc., make a list. Don't just get sucked in when all of these ads start, being bamboozled down your throat. Make a list of things that you know are things that you would really value. And I think the context to then overlay is, well, what's the story of these items? And can you do that in a way that perhaps, fulfills your want and desire to give more consideration to what impact it has, not only for where it's come from, but also the person who's receiving it. Like, especially with children, they're more interested in the bloody wrapper than the actual item. If it's just going to sit in a box forever, don't buy it for them. Give them an experience. Think about something that you can do differently. And I think it does, either when you are being really considered with your cash flow, or you're being considered with the story of each purchase, it forces you to be more creative, and it forces you to give less fucks about what people think. So my niece she's just turned 6, but we have her scooter birthday party next Saturday. Everyone has to they don't have to bring anything, but my brother and sister-in-law have said if you would like to bring something, she would like $5 because she's saving up for a big thing, which I think for a 6-year-old is a really, really cool thing to do. But she's not getting a gift from me. She's never got a gift from me because that is not what I ever wanted to do. I write her a letter with crazy things in it, and I invest in an investment bond that's going to vest to her when she's 25, because I made this decision when she was born. I don't need to participate in this BS consumption. I see how many she could start Toys R Us again. She could resurrect the brand because she has enough, honestly, to start probably several shops. But I had this question from a few people when I talked about it last year, which was, do you ever feel embarrassed turning up to the birthday party with no gift? And I was like, no, should I? No, it's never even occurred to me that it's embarrassing. As if she would notice there's a giant bundle of toys or gifts on the table. But I think this idea of the story that you were just mentioning, it forces you to be more creative, but it also forces you to step away from some societal norms and potentially face some judgment and be okay with that.
Yeah, I think you can be confident in why you're wanting to tell the story that you are, and certainly not backlash at any judgment with preaching about, well, do you know where those clothes were made and how they were made? But just gently inviting people on the journey that you're going on as well. I liked your 24-hour rule, and it reminded me of a rule that I saw that I think is really helpful. So this comes from Shaquilla Forbes-Bell, but she has a 4-3-2-1 rule. Can I see myself wearing it in 4 years' time? Can I see myself wearing it in 3 different outfits or styled 3 different ways? Can I take 2 deep breaths? And can I get 1 good night's sleep? And I think that the revenue of these sites, if we took those 4-3-2-1 steps, would really plummet.
I love that so much. And how many purchases would not be made?
That's right.
If that was given consideration. Okay, so I would love to sort of change pace and talk a bit about, this is a big topic and it's quite heavy, but I think we have to go there because you are the expert and you've done so much amazing research. What do you think is the piece that people misunderstand the most when it comes to the supply chain of fast fashion? Is it different to what we've already talked about in the previous episode, or is there anything else that you think people really don't understand about the supply chain of fast fashion?
I would probably say the human face or the human story in that supply chain. Because the clothes all look the same and they're pretty cheap and they're on AI models, it really feels faceless and devoid of humanity and therefore devoid of human impact. But that's actually not the case. I got married earlier this year and thank you. And I met the designer of the wedding dress that I bought, and then I took it to the tailor and I was really aware of the people involved and how hands-on it was and the cost involved then to get those pieces. And we feel that maybe with those high-end pieces that we invest in a lot, but not with fast fashion. That's not to say that it's not the same level of detail and involvement from people. They're just further away from us.
So true. And there's I hope you don't mind me saying this, but there's a beautiful irony there because you obviously, that was a big process and it sounds like it was a big cost, and yet it's an item that we know we're probably wearing once.
Yeah.
It's such a fascinating, so that is, and obviously it's a big milestone and it's obviously a huge celebration. You have all the photos and forever and ever. But, it is interesting that for that thing, the thing where we know that's a one day in our life important milestone, we do get it. And we do want that connection because obviously it's a really sentimental moment for us. And yet the clothes that we might wear hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times, we don't have any connection to.
That's right.
Fascinating. I find humans endlessly fascinating. You and Hannah mentioned that there are countries developed off the back of global manufacturing. Does that make sense? Countries developed off the back of global manufacturing.
Yeah, their economies have developed. Yeah.
How can we support those people, those countries, whilst also transitioning to fairer models? How do we do that?
Yeah, it's a great and complex question that's kind of leaning into a concept called the just transition.
Oh, say more.
Which is we need to transition our economy to be more sustainable. We can't operate the way we have been. We can't operate with constantly needing to outdo last year's profit and market share. But then if I'm going to transform how my products are made or maybe scale back necessarily for sustainability, what's that going to do for workers? So you hear that a lot in, coal or energy production, but we're talking about that in the fashion industry as well. So how can we empower workers and continue to give them meaningful work while moving towards sustainability? And maybe a first step is that they're given more time to make clothes that are quality, or they're upskilled in wonderful, pieces of craftsmanship as well. We actually shared the story of a worker recently, I think in last year's report, and she worked at a fabric mill, so she wasn't involved in sewing the final pieces together, but in making the rolls of fabric that then went to the final factory. And she said, "What I make is beautiful. I love thinking about the things that are made with the fabric that I'm making." And I thought that was so lovely, and I wish that was the whole story of her working life, that she loved working in fashion. She got to make beautiful things, and she dreamed of, what was designed from there. But the other side of that is that she's not paid enough. She doesn't work in safe conditions. The chemicals that she's using might be harming her health. And I would love to get to a place where the industry actually is just, it's beautiful that you get to participate in this. And fashion is expressive and joyful, and it can be for the workers as well.
And you can be proud of it because you know that the item you've purchased is aligned to you and your values, but also that it has actually helped rather than exploited people along that way.
Yeah.
Do you think global brands genuinely want to know what's happening in their subcontracted factories? Like, I'm thinking about, and I'm pretty sure it was Shein. Was it Shein who took like those influencer peeps on some sort of like grand world tour?
Yes.
But they took them to like
The show factory.
Yeah, I was going to say something really awful, which I will not say, but the best one, let's say, to give them a very skewed view of what the world is like for the factory workers.
Yeah.
Which is so bullshit. Like, that's just horrific. Is it that they don't want to know? Is it that it's convenient and profitable, or it's too hard to change? Do you think?
I think it's all of the above, and probably different motivations for different companies. In the case of Shein, they have something like 7,000 suppliers just for final stage pieces. Wow. And to think, how can I do my due diligence, conduct social audits, make sure that I have a good relationship with the supplier, make sure that the workers have a channel to raise their grievances with me? Are they being paid a living wage? All of these factors multiplied by 7,000 is a lot of work to do and a lot of visibility that you need to maintain over all of these factories. And they're just really not keeping up with that. We encourage kind of consolidating your supplier base so that you do have better leverage and a better connection with the one or two factories that you're working with. But that's not the path that Shein is taking at the moment. And it does just create a lot of work for themselves. They're enjoying revenue and, addiction and a lot of profits from a lot of consumers that aren't asking those questions or aren't putting on the brakes because of some of those red flags. And also they're in a regulatory environment where they don't have those standards set around the world. That's meaning that they can't operate in some of the ways that they have been.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting when you think about like what roles do businesses have to create companies that do good versus waiting until they are forced to be doing within the regulatory framework that they exist in. And, I think most humans like to think that money is fascinating. What money and profit does to people at every level is fascinating. And, I think especially at the top, we like to think, well, we don't need to over-regulate business. We just need to, make it easier for people and stop governments, getting their hands in everywhere. And it's like, well, if we actually just did better, they wouldn't probably need, I don't think that they're doing it at the moment, but like, it's clear to me from looking at this from a very, very outsider lens that actually it's not true. Like, actually, governments seem to need to do this because when they don't and profit is put right at the centre and everything else is sort of secondary or circuitry to that, they're not making decisions through the lenses that I think a lot of their consumers would assume that they do make them through. Mm-hmm. And there's this sort of this misalignment like, oh, yeah, I assume people who make this get paid a living wage. I assume that they're not like killing fish down the road from their factory with the stuff that they're like spewing out of we just assume like, oh, yeah, surely they just know that they have to do the right thing. Yeah, nah.
Yeah. There's so much blame shifting that happens. Businesses will say, the consumer wants this. They want it at this price point, so we're giving it to them at this price point. The consumer will say, I assumed the business was doing the right thing and could actually afford to sell me clothes at this price while not undercutting their whole supply chain. The business is also saying, well, when the government puts in regulation that makes us work this way, maybe we will, but it's anti-competitive to do so before we're required to. So everyone's kind of pointing fingers, but I think we waste a lot of time doing that. And what if everyone came to the table, consumers did what we needed to do, businesses did what they needed to do, governments did what they needed to do, and just raise the standard. Businesses take ownership of their impact on the supply chain. Consumers lean into their choice and their voice and allow, participate in the industry that they want to see created.
Agree. Do you think that's ever going to happen though?
I think we can take steps there.
You're far more positive than me. I think I'm just like jaded because I'm just like, what? Like, why hasn't this already happened? But I think this is coming back to the great work that you are doing. And this is where actually things like social media can become so powerful, because it's like, well, actually the amplification can happen at a very grassroots level. You can share stories or insights, or even just something like, I've actually just listened to this podcast series and I've just learnt this, and I don't know if everyone else already knew this, but like, holy shit, I'm just now reimagining how I'm going to do things moving forward. There can be ripple effects that can start. And I think, I sometimes get very doom and gloom because I'm like, just stop it spinning and just get me off, and just like, I've had enough of everyone. But I think it is really important for us to recognize that we have choice and we have power and we have autonomy, and do not underestimate that ripple impact and ripple effect that we can have.
Yeah. In the last episode of our series, we invite all of the guests that we interviewed to speak to what they hope for the future of fashion, and also if they could redesign the industry, what values would they redesign it around? And Alice Payne, who I've mentioned already in this episode, and also Julie Bolton, who's a sustainability strategist, they both had similar themes around kind of necessity as the mother of invention. When they talked about the future of the fashion, they thought that the way that we participated in it was going to change a lot, because some hard truths would come out about our impact on the environment, and we'd have to change how we were operating, and there would be creativity born out of not having access to certain materials anymore, or really needing to radically change the industry. And I think maybe that's a pretty dramatic view to take, but what if we just dabbled in those sustainable practices now before they're a necessity? Start toying with that creativity, start understanding which fibres are maybe performing better than others, in hope and preparation for this future that we might be approaching.
I love that. We're going to do a quick break, and when we come back, I have got questions on that and some others that I'd like to dive deeper into. Every time you talk, I'm like, oh, I have more. There's just more. So stay tuned after the break. I want to talk about exactly what you just mentioned, but I also just want to talk about an idea that I have. Nothing like an impromptu idea for our listeners to perhaps take up.
If you're after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. If you would like help based on your own personal situation, head over to moneypodcast.com.au, click Get Help, and we'd be happy to introduce you to one of our trusted professionals. Our panel of vetted financial advisors and mortgage brokers work with people all over Australia, so they can connect with you wherever you are. That's moneypodcast.com.au and click Get Help.
Okay, so welcome back. Did you know it's Buy Nothing New Month when this is being released?
I didn't know that.
Yes. So October, as far as I'm aware, is Buy Nothing New Month, which I love because if we're talking about this idea that we are constantly bombarded and it can become this cyclical, habitual thing that we do, we are known to ourselves for having the latest things. We've marked identity, our identity around different items. The 24-hour rule is like the first frontier. But if you are brave and you want to do something, like gamify this, if you want to test yourself, I think October is a really wonderful month to do this. We are recording this early October. So you might also cheat because you might not be actually listening to this until middle of October. So you might only do it for the remainder or the residual, or you might be listening to this at a completely different point in time. But I think a 4-week challenge does bring that creativity, that invention that you were just mentioning, because you then do have to think far more strategically. I have no shame and am often saying to friends, oh, do you have this that I can borrow? Or I've got this event, can I swap this with you?
Yeah.
And if you've never had to do that before, that'll feel really uncomfortable. But if you've got a couple of weeks where you're like, well, I can't buy the new thing, what am I going to do? You might actually start, having conversations or doing things slightly different and realize, actually, that was really easy, or that was really good, or I'm going to become a member of the library of things that's down the road, and I'm going to,
So cool.
borrow
Yeah.
camping gear or whatever it might be. So I just wanted to remind people that is
Can
here.
I just add in, actually,
Please.
I didn't know about this overlap, but Baptist World Day does something called Swaptober, where we
Ooh.
encourage a clothing swap, or encourage people to swap instead of shop in the month of October. Maybe run a clothing swap just in their living room with their friends, or in their, church hall, or with their school group or something. And it's a great way to clear out things in your wardrobe that you're no longer wearing and refresh your wardrobe in a sustainable way. And then you get to spot clothes that you used to love on your friends as well, which is really fun.
Oh my gosh, that's a great idea.
Yeah,
Well, there you go. You can have your friends over. Everyone brings some things and
that's right.
swap on over. I'm just thinking of like the practicalities of how that works. Any tips to make that work?
I think probably naturally you're friends with people that are in a similar stage as you, so might have similar clothes. If you're swapping, you can choose to bring your partner's stuff or your kids' stuff as well, and then you know that you'll be able to swap what's really needed. I think you would do this naturally with a clothing swap, but the guide is kind of, is this of a quality that I would want to gift to a friend? It's not the pit-stained workout T-shirt that I want to get rid of from the back of my wardrobe. Maybe don't bring that to the clothing swap or to the op shop. But yeah, just good quality pieces, and just get together and
think
share
about
around.
sizing, because like if you've got friends from all different sizes, that would have potentially
yeah,
be
I
something
think
to
that's
consider.
where you can choose how big the group is, I guess, that you're inviting. Then there'll be people of different sizes that can swap their pieces.
Yeah. I've never done that. I've just borrowed from friends, or friends have just been like, take this. I get so many clothes gifted to me. I think my friends just feel sorry for me, which I'm fine with. And they're just like, for God's sakes, could you please just wear something new or different? And they're like, here, I don't wear this anymore. So I've accidentally done swaps, but I haven't swapped back.
It's a fun event.
It's
Get out a
time.
cheese board,
Yes.
crack a, rosé,
Yeah, I
make
love
an
that.
evening of it.
I've just been reading this book, The Art of Frugal Hedonism.
I love it. So good.
Oh my gosh, I haven't met anyone else who's read it.
Really?
Yes.
So good.
Okay, well, then you'll know where I'm coming from. And it's this idea that we've created societies that hang out. There are very few places in modern day society where we can get together outside of our homes without spending money. And, in Europe, and they have town halls and, big sort of
plazas.
where,
Yeah.
cute old men play chess and
Yeah.
smoke and drink espressos or what
Or
have
do
you.
like Thursday evening dance classes and stuff.
There is
Yeah.
nothing, if I'm not old dancing in some sort of town square, something's gone horribly wrong. But I thought that was so true. It's just like, it's all based around spending. And so, when you were talking about this clothes swap, I'm like, it's actually a really nice idea just to get people together and just not, like, have an experience but not spend
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
That book is very extreme in some elements. I'm trying to figure
is.
out how I can bring some of it into my life without a giant veggie patch plot
That's right.
available to me.
It's a beautiful book. I think it's
is.
nice to just go, there aren't many joys that are greater in life than a fresh in-season peach and stuff like that. And that's okay. Like, let me just enjoy this affordable or sustainable way to spend my money, or spend less of it.
Go and read it. And yes, I think
It is lovely.
It is beautiful. And also it just reminds you that there's, exactly to your point, there is joy everywhere. But if you're scrolling or rushing, it can be so easy to miss it. And I miss it often. But like since I've been reading it, have been really trying to go on public transport and just be and walk and notice what is going on around me. And I wouldn't say I'm a particularly spendy person anyway, but it's helped me reevaluate. Also, because I'm quite a challenge-oriented person, I'm like, how could I take it to the next level and get maximum joy, maximum enjoyment? Because some people assume that to spend less money or to spend no money is an automatic trade-off of happiness and joy, which is so at odds with what this book, I think, tells you. And yeah, it's just given me some really good opportunities to be like, how can I level up here?
That's something that I love to think about in my own life, and that really came throughout researching for this series, is that so often the things that are good for me are good for the planet, are good for, people around the world. there's just another reason to add to the list to get off my phone and get off social media a bit more, that I'm seeing less ads and I'm less tempted, and they're also getting less data about me and exactly what I want to buy. There's so many examples of fibre that feels good for me to wear is also probably better for the environment, or clothing that I, rummaged through a charity store and found the perfect piece is really rewarding and is also better for the environment. And those overlaps are really exciting to me. And I think that book leans into that as well.
Definitely. Can you talk, because we were talking about this before the break, about fibres. I don't know anything about this, but, I think in the podcast series you note that something like 81% of Shein's clothing is made with synthetic material compared to an average of the Australian average is 35%.
Yeah.
Firstly, what are these materials that are no good? What should we not be buying in terms of materials? And then I think we can talk about broadly, what does that actually mean as at a prioritization sort of level? But what, as a consumer, are there particular materials that we should stay the hell away from?
I maybe wouldn't set the language that extreme. There's some times where polyester clothing is great and necessary. But for the most part, I think a lot of people don't even realise polyester is a type of plastic. Plastic is made from fossil fuels. We might have done all the right things to invest our super ethically and to look at, which funds we're investing in and if they're aligned. And we really don't want to be investing in fossil fuel extraction. We know what that's doing to the planet. We might bring our reusable bags to the shops, but then the clothes that we're putting in these reusable bags, if they're cheaply made, they're just kind of a single-use plastic as well in a different form. And the reason that polyester is so great is because it can become a lot of different things. It can feel fuzzy like wool. It can feel stretchy and good for active wear. It can feel like cotton. Yeah, I think polyester can feel like wool. It can feel like cotton. It can feel like silk, but it's actually just this great chameleon of a type of plastic.
Okay, so if we just took one thing from this, it's just looking if it's polyester, perhaps look for a natural fibre alternative.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Definitely. I think there might be some cases where it's really necessary. I think maybe plastic makes great gumboots, but it doesn't need to make great fluffy jumpers, So let's use plastic in our clothing very sparingly and where we really need it, rather than across the board, as you said, Shein using 81% of their fibre mix being synthetic fibres. It's a bit...
Because they don't break down, right? And then we've got this floating island of stuff in, I have seen some horrific footage online of all of the textile waste that legitimately is it's like its own island of clothing that's just being dumped a lot of the time, from what I understand, in poorer countries to then have to deal with it.
Yeah.
I think also the discarding of clothes is a really big, important part of this. Yes, who made it? Yes, what conditions were they forced really to work in, and what did they get as a representation of their trade-off of time? But on the other side, when the thing breaks down, if it ever breaks down, what happens to your garment when we give it away? Because a lot of, you were just saying don't give away crap that's, not suitable. Sometimes, my mum does some volunteer work at a charity, and she said the stuff that we get given is totally inappropriate for what we need, and we could never, ever use it. But I think a lot of people just give away everything, and then they feel like they've, quote unquote, done good.
Yeah.
And so thus they don't need to worry about where those clothes end up. But we have to, because it's going somewhere. I don't know. I just feel like we need to give that more thought.
Yeah, it's really complex, and it's fraught to feel like you've done the right thing by donating your clothes that you're not wearing to an op shop. But if you wouldn't give it to a friend, maybe it's not of the quality that someone would buy it from an op shop, then we ship it overseas to become someone else's problem. Again, it's a matter of justice.
There is, obviously I could talk to you all day about all of the different elements of this, because it is a big thing. I'm also just fascinated as someone who doesn't, often poke my head into fashion-related circles. This is obviously quite fascinating for me to look at the intersect of wanting to wear clothes that, make you feel good, and you're totally allowed I mean, not that you care whether I give you permission to do anything, but like it's okay to want to do that and to have it as a form of self-expression, to consider the impact of that not only on the world at large and all of the different components that we're talking about, but also on your money and your goals. You know, we talked in the last episode about the ways that we can do differently and speak to our MPs, but perhaps if people needed a reminder of some of the tools and resources that you have, both in the report, which comes out every 2 years, and the podcast series, and also the MPs, that would be great.
Yeah, so as a refresher, I think Baptist World Aid, obviously I'm biased, I'm in the ethical fashion team there, but I think we have created a lot of resources that are really helpful for consumers no matter where they are on this journey. Our ethical fashion guide includes the scores of over 450 brands, how they're treating workers and the environment in their supply chain. So you can, before you go shopping, check out who's maybe doing better than their peers, whether your favourite brands are stacking up in line with your values, and you can choose to change where you shop. You can also use that as a reminder to reduce how much we shop a little bit, because the whole industry has a lot of room to grow. And then alongside that, we've created this Speak Out to Your MP tool. If you get to see the scores in the ethical fashion guide, or you hear some things that you don't like on Behind the Barcode, our podcast series, let's take it to our MPs and say, you need to level the playing field here. We need our whole industry to do better.
I love that so much. And, you know, I also think, you know, next time you're being marketed to and scrolling, just doing that quick check back of, well, what is their score? And I'm just thinking, you know, I think it would be really good to have organizations know, like, hey, we know that your score is this. Like, I can't buy from you until you improve your score. And creating some visibility around that, I think, is a really simple, easy way to use your voice to, again, create a ripple effect, but also let brands know you're losing me as a customer until you improve this. And I think that that's sort of the agitation that, you know, ultimately this is a big system and it's really complicated, and you have a lot of people with a lot of money at the top who are going to resist change if it means that they lose profit. And I think we have to be honest about that. But that does not mean that we can't all say, I'm caring more about the story of the thing. I'm being careful and curated about what I buy and what I, you know, am prioritizing. But I'm also going to hold organizations accountable, because I'm not going to spend my money with them if I've decided it's not a priority for me. And it is okay if you're in a financial position where you cannot get to the perfect level that you want to be at yet. This is a journey. This is not to shame you. If you're like, oh my God, I literally am in the car on my way back from buying $3 t-shirts at Kmart. How dare you make me feel like this? That is not to do that at all. It is about understanding as consumers what you're buying. Like we do with food, I think in most instances, like I think there just needs to be a level of transparency. And if you're comfortable with that, I mean, that's on you. But I think for the rest of us who start learning this stuff, it's then about, well, how can I change? What do I do? And how can I help people who understand? Like when I read your report initially years and years ago, was your first one like 6 years ago?
2013 was our first one.
Yeah. I remember, and being really transparent, I used to shop a lot at Zara then. And I remember talking to my flatmate about it. And we were like, yeah, no, we can't do that. And so having these conversations where I was just genuinely shocked and sharing with people, not to be like, did you know that your clothing item is horrific and that makes you horrific? Not at all. It was more, oh my goodness, I'm learning this thing, and did you know this too? I just think in all of these situations, it's about, I think you talk about this in the podcast, it's creating hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
So any final messages for our listeners that we have not covered in quite this extensive two-part?
It has been extensive. What you were just saying about speaking out to the brand, we do love to make things easy for people. So we have a similar Speak Out to Brand tool. So you can send an email straight to the brand saying, I saw your score in the Ethical Fashion Guide and I was not a fan. Please pick up your game. And I think as we're releasing this maybe in late October, it's the perfect time. We could be cheeky about this, and we know how many emails brands send us to stay on our radar. What if every time we got a marketing email from a fashion company, we jumped on and used the Speak Out to Brands tool and say, you want me to buy from you? I'm telling you I'm not buying from you because I need you to pick up your game. I think we would really get on their nerves and maybe create some change by doing that.
Love that. Can we put a link somewhere to that tool as well? Thank you for the work that you're doing, because I think it's Maya Angelou who said, you know, I'm going to absolutely muck it up, but like, we are not free until we are all free. I'm paraphrasing, but I spend a lot of time talking about how to become financially free and independent, but I don't want that to be at the cost of others' ability to be free and independent. And we don't normally get to do look-throughs like this. And so I think that this is, I just find you hugely insightful and really interesting. And I look forward to percolating on a lot of the things that you have talked about over the last 2 episodes. I look forward to doing much more deep diving on this series. And thank you for all of the people, predominantly women, that you will never see, that you will never know all their stories on, because hopefully by us coming together, we can actually improve the lives of millions and millions of people around the world. So thank you.
That's right. Thank you, Jess. It's been great to share a little bit about what we do and the story of how our clothes get to us.
Amazing. Okay, if you have liked today's episode, I would be so grateful if you could rate, review, send me your thoughts and insights, Jess Brady _financial advice on Instagram, or you can post any additional questions in the Money, Money, Money community. You now know what to do. You got lots of ideas from this episode, but I hope you go now and be financially fierce. Bye.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia. We pay our respects to elders past and present. Any advice is general financial advice only, which does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Because of that, you should consider if the advice is appropriate to you and your needs before acting on the information. If you do choose to buy a financial product, read the Product Disclosure Statement, PDS, and Target Market Determination, TMD, and obtain appropriate financial advice tailored to your needs. Jessica Brady is an Authorised Representative of Paragem Pty Ltd, Authorised Representative Number 1259972, AFSL 297276, ABN 16108571875, Corporate Authorised Representative Number 1305567.